And we have a lot of information to share. If you followed the press lately, you understand that the governor has proposed this budget. And the way it works in Idaho is that even though we're in calendar year 2022, come July, we will be July 1 in fiscal year 23. So I'm going to be talking about the current fiscal year 22 and the next fiscal year 23. You've probably also heard the state of Idaho has a $1.9 billion budget surplus. And this is a huge number because ordinarily the state, the general fund spending, and that's of course supported by sales tax and your income taxes and corporate income tax, product taxes, is in the $4 billion range. And a lot of money has flowed in the state with COVID relief, and the state is growing. We've got new people moving into the state. So there's this enormous surplus. And so what the governor is proposing to do is provide a modest, but we would say incomplete tax cut, and then spend a lot of money. And one of the things that we had hoped when Governor Little became governor after Governor Otter was that he would moderate the growth in spending. And the governor is actually proposing an 8% increase. And that's about double what he's been proposing, an 8% meaning the change from 22 to 23. It's about double what he was proposing the last couple of years. And a lot of this is influenced by federal money. So I'm going to sort of take a segue into the whole story with federal money. And I'll try to make it quick, and then I'll come back to what I think we need to do. So when the COVID crisis, whatever you want to call it, hit America, Idaho was one of course, 50 states that received a number of packages of money. And the stipulations essentially were if a state doesn't spend it, it would go to other states. So it was a force feed of money. And people might say some of it was necessary. We wouldn't disagree. Some of it was, especially early on. But the money has kept coming. And what it does is it distorts incentives. So a state that might have wanted to chart a fiscally conservative path now finds all this money in front of it. And it looks for ways to spend it, looks for places to stash the money. And that's what's happening. And we've often talked about federal dependency and how there's strings. And I'm going to talk about one specific string and talk about some alternatives. I actually would call it a noose. So if you're aware of the recent Supreme Court decisions, the Supreme Court said that the Biden administration couldn't force businesses with over 100 employees to insist that their employees vaccinate. Unfortunately, there was another decision that said that recipients of Medicare and Medicaid money, e.g., large healthcare providers like St. Luke's and St. Al's, could force their employees to vaccinate. What does this have to do with the budget? Idaho now gets about 45% of its appropriations from the federal government. And if St. Luke's or St. Al's didn't force their employees to vaccinate, that money would be cut off, the Medicaid money. And if that money were cut off, these large hospitals now get half of their revenue from the federal government. They would close. That's not my opinion. That's the statement from the Idaho Hospital Association. So we're now in a position where things look very robust in Idaho, and they are in certain areas, but it's also because we are dependent on federal dollars for which, if they're cut off, for example, the hospital system would collapse. And that's a lot of what's happening with this budget. So when the governor talks about surpluses and all the things he's going to spend money on, a lot of this is generated from borrowed federal funds that have been deposited and pushed into Idaho. They flowed into our coffers. So that's a big deal. What we would propose is certainly if there is federal money, the things to spend it on are deferred maintenance on roads, on bridges, one-time things, don't grow government. And Brad Little is doing some of that. But unfortunately, he's also growing government. He's proposing about 400 new state employee positions. He's talking about a very robust raise for state employees, about 5%. Perhaps they deserve it, but none of them were laid off, like a lot of private business people were laid off or businesses closed. So his budget really favors government over the citizen. And if you look at his tax cut, a very large piece of it is a rebate, meaning he's going to give you money back on a one-time basis instead of restructuring things like the property tax and taking the tax off food. So what we would say about this budget, it's an institutional budget. It's designed to protect and grow government, to provide a little tax relief for Idahoans, to conceal how big the growth of government is because they use a lot of fund transfers, and essentially to put Idaho on a path for ever greater dependency on the federal government, which is a problem because, for one, Joe Biden is president right now and he doesn't make good decisions. But two, the federal government is now stretched to the point where their debt is 29 trillion with a T. And that can't go on forever. And if that slows down, then Idaho slows down, and all these programs that we're depending on the federal government to pay for, we can't support. So this is not a conservative budget. It's an institutional budget from someone who's really looking at preserving Idaho's government. I'm going to add one other thing, and that is the education support. So the governor is bragging about adding 11% and then 11% increase to K through 12 support. And there's a problem with this because this is on top of hundreds of millions of dollars that have been added, in the last 7 or 8 years. And the promise was when they stepped up the spending that results would improve. They have not improved. So again, the governor is saying, well, let's throw 46 million into literacy. Literacy should be a core component of the money that is already given to education. Instead, we have to add another 46 million. And this has been going on for many years where we have to keep adding extra money for literacy. But I'll close on this. The governor said that he is showing his support for education by investing in it. And he's basically ceding the point of the left, which is throw money at problems. More money is going to help. But he's not offering parents a clear choice in education. Choice would be competition with the existing system, and that would help parents. And that's another missed opportunity of this budget. More on subsequent Fiscal Fridays with Fred. Thank you.